may sound, it was actually the most impact was from Shakespeare. It was the most impact on multiple levels. And I'll tell you the primary level. And when I've covered Shakespeare on my podcast, I explain this to people. People think, well, I didn't really understand. I read it, I didn't understand it. If you think you're going to just pick up Shakespeare, open it up and read it and understand it, you're not going to, because it's barely written in English. It's barely written in English. It's almost another language. So what you have to do is you have to start to interpret it. And so what I realized with Shakespeare is, number one, the weight of the words, that these words were so pregnant with meaning that you had to pull those words and parse those words and pull those words apart to see all the depth that each individual word had, and then the way that they're put together. And what was great about this was, by the time I was back, because then I went right back into the SEAL teams, and somebody would hand me a rules of engagement document that was written by some lawyer in Washington, D.C., and I'd pull it out and say, wait a second, this word, I don't know what this word means. So let's pull this word out. Let's see what this actual definition of this particular word is, and how that changes my viewpoint of these rules of engagement, and how can I translate that for my troops so that they actually know what to do. So that part for me was, from a reading perspective, starting to read Shakespeare and saying, oh, okay, you're not going to understand this. And if you don't understand something, that's okay. You pull out the Oxford English Dictionary and you look it up. And then you not just find out what the meaning of the word is, but what's the root word and where does it come from and what kind of depth and what kind of...
Yeah, and that's really, that's unbelievably useful too. Virtually every word is like that, because a word is an ancient artifact. It's like an animal in some sense. It has an evolutionary history and it transforms across time. And each word it carries the echoes of its past with it too, because each word attracts other words in a particular unique way. So it kind of lives in a word ecosystem as well. And the ecosystem contains information about the history of that word. And you think, well, why is that important? It's like, well, hey, guess what? You think in words, you talk in words, you have all these archaic entities, these words, these living entities that you use. It's like the more you know about them, the more you know about you, the more you know about other people, and the better you are at formulating and communicating your ideas. There's nothing lost in that kind of investigation. There's nothing but gain there. Your ambition, if you have any sense, is actually to become competent.
Do you want to be competent and dangerous, or do you want to be vague and useless? It is definitely the case that there is no more exceptional form of the capacity to be dangerous than to be articulate. And so it's a moral endeavor in some real sense. Right? To become articulate is to become the master of your own tongue.
Every advantage comes with a disadvantage. So if you're extroverted, you're social and you're positive, but you're impulsive and you can tilt towards hedonism and you can't stand being alone. No matter where you land in the temperamental landscape, you're going to have your associated faults and temptations. You got a goal, and you'll see that as you progress towards the goal, there'll be obstacles that emerge, and some of them you don't want to confront. That's why it's useful to order your room. Chaotic room makes you anxious. Why? Too many pathways, man. People don't really repress the things they don't want to face, they just fail to unpack them. You want a horizon of ever-expanding possibility. We're built to walk uphill, and when you reach the pinnacle of the hill, you want to stop and appreciate the vision, but the next thing you want is a higher hill in the distance. Beware of unintended consequences. It's like, oh no, this thing will just do what I want it to do and nothing else. It's like, no, it turns out that not only is what we want from each other the real thing, but that's also the adventure of your life. And so if you aren't truthful, and that means, unfortunately, especially at the beginning, when you start to be truthful, it means deeply coming to terms with your inadequacies in humility. So it's very painful. Without that, you don't have the adventure of your life. You have the role that you've acquiesced to, and that'll take all the meaning out of your life. It's good for you to go take your place in the world. Have some ambition, have a vision, have a goal, have a strategy. Try to be a good person, not because it's your duty precisely, because that's the proper way to live. You sit on the bed and say, okay, man, I'm ready to learn something. What's one thing I'm doing wrong, that I know I'm doing wrong, that I could fix? You meditate on that, you'll get an answer. You grow in proportion to the weight you take on voluntarily. And it's also true that we have no idea what the upper limit to that is.